Today, we are diving into a movement that's not really about getting rich quick. It's about something way more valuable. It's about getting your time back. We're going to break down the biggest ideas from Scott Rieckens' incredible book, Playing with Fire, and see just how it's done. You know that feeling, right? The alarm goes off, you do the commute, you put in the hours, and by the time you get home, you're just wiped. You're making a living, for sure, but are you actually living? This feeling of being stuck on a hamster wheel? Yeah, that is exactly where our story kicks off.
But what if there's another way to live? See, Scott Rieckens, he thought he was living the dream, but he felt that exact same trap closing in. His book, Playing with Fire, is all about his family's incredible journey to find a totally radical alternative, and we are going to unpack the absolute best ideas from it.
All right, so let's set the scene. Before this whole journey started, Scott and his wife Taylor were living a life that he calls ultra-consumer. And believe me, it's a story that is probably going to sound very, very familiar. I mean, this is the classic paradox, isn't it? If you looked at their life on paper, they had it made. Great jobs, good income, a beautiful home, all the things that scream success. But behind the curtain, their finances were all about lifestyle, with almost nothing left for savings and this constant nagging feeling of pressure.
And we're not just talking about random spending here. Nope. We're talking about specific, really expensive choices. A leased BMW, a high-end boat club membership. You know, all the stuff that's supposed to show everyone you've made it, but really, all it was doing was quietly draining their bank account and stealing their freedom. And then one day, just by chance, listening to a podcast, everything changed. Scott stumbled upon this entire community of people who were living a completely different kind of life, and it was all built around one single powerful idea. And here it is. That idea is FIRE. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. But you know, that retire early part can be a little misleading. The book makes it super clear that this isn't about sitting on a beach doing nothing for 50 years. It's about getting to a point where you have the freedom to choose what you work on and how you spend your day without being forced to do it just for a paycheck. Here's the key. This is the whole goal. You hit financial independence the moment your money starts working for you, instead of you always having to work for it. When the cash from your investments is enough to pay all your bills, you're no longer trading your life away for money. You've basically picked the lock on the cage. You've bought back your life.
If you are finding this video helpful, please make sure to hit that like button and share it with someone who this might help and be a benefit to their financial decision-makings. Your support means a lot to me and helps the channel grow, allowing the YouTube algorithm to show this content to a bigger crowd. More people can benefit from these ideas and hopefully improve their financial well-being.
Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a fantasy, right? But the engine that makes this whole thing work is, well, it's based on some surprisingly simple math. So let's take a look at how it actually works. This table right here, this is the entire engine of the FIRE movement. Seriously, forget all the complicated financial jargon for a second and just look at these numbers. If you save a typical 10% of your income, you're looking at 51 years of work. Oof. But if you can crank that up to a 50% savings rate, that timeline completely collapses to just 17 years. How is that possible? Well, it's because every single dollar you save is doing two jobs at once. It's growing your investments, and it's lowering the amount of money you need to live on in the first place. It's a total game changer.
So, how in the world does someone save 50 or even 70% of their income? Well, the book's pretty clear. You don't get there by skipping your morning latte. You get there by going after the big fish, what they call the big three: housing, transportation, and food. That's where almost all of our money goes. So making big, deliberate changes in these areas can free up enormous amounts of cash to save and invest.
Okay,
But let's be real for a second. This is not easy. This quote from Scott's wife, Taylor, is so important because it gets to the human side of all this. The sacrifices, like giving up her BMW, are felt right away. They're real, they're painful. But the rewards, your net worth ticking up on a spreadsheet, that can feel pretty abstract at first. It really takes time and a ton of commitment before you actually start to feel the positives.
And that leads us to maybe the most important piece of this entire puzzle. See, FIRE isn't just about spreadsheets and savings rates. It's a deep, fundamental shift in how you think about a successful life. It's all about finding your why.
Our culture is constantly selling us this picture of what happiness should look like, right? It's all the stuff on the left, the fancy car, the huge house, the gadgets. But the whole point of the FIRE movement is to challenge that, to get you to figure out what actually makes you happy. And when Scott and Taylor really looked at their lives, they realized the things that brought them the most joy, time together, strong relationships, freedom, they weren't on any bill. They were spending all their money on a script for a life that wasn't even making them happy.
And you know what? There's actual science that backs this up. This study, which is mentioned in the book, is pretty fascinating. It found that for day-to-day happiness, there's a sweet spot, somewhere between $60,000 and $75,000 a year. Once your basic needs are met and you're comfortable, just earning more money doesn't really move the happiness needle. Chasing millions is often just chasing an illusion.
This quote from Scott really just nails it. FIRE isn't some escape hatch you pull in 20 years. It's a blueprint for building a better, more intentional life right now, today, by making sure your spending actually lines up with what you truly value.
All right, so you get the what and you get the why. Now let's get down to business and talk about the how. Here's the action plan from the book.
So the book lays out a few key steps, but these are really the big ones. First, you have to calculate your net worth. That's just everything you own minus everything you owe. You can't plan a trip if you don't know where you're starting from, right? Next, you track every dollar to see where it's really going. Then, you attack those big three expenses we talked about. And this is crucial. You put every spare dollar to work by investing it so your money starts making more money all by itself.
Honestly, if you forget everything else from this, just remember this one sentence. This little mantra from a legend in the FIRE community named J.L. Collins is the entire strategy in a nutshell. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, and stay away from consumer debt. That's it. That is the whole game.
Okay, let's wrap this all up with the absolute keys to freedom. First, and this is the most important one, define your why. This whole thing is meaningless if you don't know what kind of life you're trying to build. Second, master the math. It really does all boil down to your savings rate. Third, invest simply. You don't need to be a Wall Street whiz. The community loves low-cost index funds. They're just a simple way to own a tiny piece of the whole market. And last but not least, find your community. This is not the normal path, and having people who get it makes all the difference in the world.
And that's where we'll leave it, with the exact question the book poses right on its cover. It's a question for every single one of us. How far are you willing to go to be financially free? What are you ready to change or challenge or maybe even give up in order to buy back your own life? It's a big question to think about.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching. I'm Finance Puppy, and here's to a better financial tomorrow. Cheers!